All right, guys. Excuse me. This is on day 10 of Better Critical Thinking in 30 Days. This looks like an interesting one today because we talked about questions yesterday to ask questions, to ask better questions. And today, actually, they kind of give you a guide about 3 kinds of questions: questions of fact, questions of preference, and questions of judgment. And I'm going to show you a little chart that they have. This is the Kindle one, okay. So there are 3 kinds of questions. Is it a matter of one definitive answer? Is it a matter of a subjective choice? Is it a matter of considering competing answers? So a definitive answer goes through this process. There's one system. It requires evidence and reasoning within a system, a single correct answer, and then you get knowledge out of that. There's the one that's totally subjective, your taste. That's called the no system. It calls for stating a subjective preference. I like this or that. I like chocolate or vanilla. That's a subjective opinion. It's not about fact. It's an opinion. And therefore, it cannot be assessed finally. It's just a matter of taste. And finally, there's conflicting systems. It doesn't have one single answer that's right. And it's not about just only preference, but it has different answers that people prefer or not, and based upon the facts they accept. This requires evidence and reasoning within multiple systems. There are better and worse answers, and then you come up with a judgment based upon the evidence. So let's look at these 3 kinds. So one way to analyze questions is to focus on the type of reasoning required by the question. With one system questions, there is an established procedure or method for finding the answer. With no system questions, the question is properly answered in accordance with one's subjective preference. There is no correct answer. And with conflicting system questions, there are multiple competing viewpoints from which and within which one might reasonably pursue an answer to the question. There are better and worse answers, but no verifiable correct ones, because even experts often disagree on how to approach them or answer them. Hence the conflict from system to system. H.L. Mencken said, "To every complex question, there is a simple answer, and it is wrong." A lot of what we have to deal with these days are indeed complex questions. People are very adamant about theirs being right, but when you look at it, it is a complex question with a lot of aspects to it, and therefore looking for a simple answer is doomed to failure. And that goes for so-called common sense too. So the first kind of question, questions of procedure, define if that kind of question has one defined correct answer. These include questions with an established procedure or method for finding the answer. They are settled by facts, by definition, or by both. And to be clear, facts are indisputable. They are indeed facts. That's how we're using the term fact. We're not going into the modern crazy idea fact, which is bullshit. Excuse my French. So these include questions with an established procedure, like they're prominent in math and sciences. So there's only one right answer to 1 + 1, 2, right? Everyone deals with these kind of questions daily. Examples include, what is the boiling point of lead? What is the size of this room? What is the differential of this equation? How does the hard drive on a computer operate? What is the sum of 659 and 979? And how is potato soup prepared according to established Polish tradition? So that's when you have one correct answer, and there's a way to find that answer because you go through certain steps. And everyone that goes through those steps has the same answer. The second kind is questions of preference, and there's really no system for people to agree on that. It's a matter of taste. There are questions with as many answers as there are different human preferences, a category in which subjective taste rules. Now remember, there's a difference between objective and subjective. So subjective in this case means it comes from the subject making the analysis, the assessment. So it's not outside yourself, it's within yourself. Answers to these questions can be, if you will, anything you like, as long as they are relevant to the question. Consequently, it wouldn't make sense to judge people for their preference. Things like football teams, whatever. It's just a preference. Examples include, which would you prefer? A vacation in the mountains or one at the seashore? No right answer. People have their preference. How do you like to wear your hair? Do you like to go to the opera? Yes or no? Which is your favorite if you have one? What color scheme do you prefer in your house? What is your favorite restaurant? Things like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? What's your favorite football team? All that, there's no right answer because it's a matter of preference. And people will never agree on preference. The third kind of thing, which is the most complex, not one answer, not just a matter of saying, well, there is no answer because what you prefer, it's your taste. It's questions of judgment, and those are conflicting systems. These are questions requiring reasoning, but with more than one arguable answer. These are questions that make sense to debate, questions with better or worse answers. That, by they mean better or worse, they mean either well supported and reasoned, or poorly supported or poorly reasoned. For these questions, we seek the best answers within a range of possibilities. Answers to these questions should be evaluated using universal intellectual standards, such as clarity, accuracy, and relevance. These questions are predominant in the human disciplines: history, philosophy, economics, sociology, art, and so on. Many everyday questions related to parenting, intimate relationships, economics, and politics are questions of judgment. Examples include, how can we best address the most basic and significant economic problems of the nation today? This is a question of judgment. There's not one answer, and it's not entirely subjective. It's complex. What can be done to significantly reduce the number of people who become addicted to harmful drugs? It's a matter of a bunch of competing ideas and evaluating those and making a judgment. How can we balance business interests and environmental preservation? There's no one answer. It's a matter of judgment. How progressive should the tax system be? Again, all kinds of evidence to work through and argue your side. Should capital punishment be abolished? Again, very deep issues there that need to be worked through. What is the best economic system? There's no argument these days about capitalism or not. But those are complex questions that have to be reasoned through, and not just, there is no one correct answer. There's pluses and minuses for all sides. What is the best way to approach this client, this person, given the complexities in the issues? It's like tribal government, complex. Now that I'm in office, I'm discovering how even more complex it is, given all the human dimensions and all the things that have to be factored into it. People tend to be better at figuring out answers to questions of fact or procedure than questions of judgment. People often it's early. People often want to simplify the thought process by looking for the right answer. Cut to the chase, common sense. What's the right answer? In questions of judgment, you're going to be never coming to a place where you can make a good judgment if you don't clarify your thinking process and look at all the possibilities and realize there will be people who are just as honest and accurate and reliable as the answers you're seeking, but from a different direction. But many of the important questions in life cannot be answered so easily. How does it make sense to parent this particular child? Kids are different. Some respond to one thing, some don't to another. One system does not fit all. What is the best way to work with this difficult employee? Not all people are the same. You're not going to get the same response. What do I want in a marriage? How do we significantly reduce the amount of destruction to the planet caused by humans? A matter of judgment. What healthcare system should I support? How do we bring out peace in the Middle East? All these questions are questions of judgment, and as such require us to reason within multiple conflicting viewpoints. Conflict is inherent to this. Be on the lookout for confusion between these three kinds of questions in the thinking of yourself or others. So, and especially look for that same confusion in your own thinking. I personally will try consciously today to think about these issues and think about whether there is a matter of a single answer that's known, like math, okay? Whether it's a matter of preference, well, I like this, I don't like that, or it's a matter of judgment. Complex reasoning is required from conflicting viewpoints to come up with your best option in a certain situation. As you go through the day, practice identifying these different types of questions. Identify them in your own thinking as well as in the thinking of others. Notice when you erroneously, mistakenly, assert a factual answer to a question that is not a question of fact. Like the politics, it's not a question of fact. That's why they will never agree. Because it's a matter of judgment, conflicting viewpoints, trying to come up with, tease out the answer. If there is an answer, it may just be very complex and there is no answer. There's just a matter of doing the best with what you have. But being clear about it, being clear about all the elements. It may not be a question of fact, but one requiring reason to judgment. Notice the same tendency in others. When thinking through a question of judgment, require all the important and relevant viewpoints and articulate those viewpoints as accurately as possible, especially those with whom you would disagree. That's what you got to look at to try to figure it out, try to find reason behind all this. So here are some strategies for internalizing and using these three kinds of questions. Just by understanding these three distinct types of questions, you can immediately apply your understanding of them in your everyday life. When in a meeting, notice the main types of questions people discuss. Are these questions focused on complex questions of judgment? Are the questions mainly factual? Are people talking about the preferences? So, for example, if you're talking about economic development or jobs or whatever, is there a matter of how many people are unemployed, percentage, whether it's full employment, what wages are? Those are matters of fact. Not what they should be, but those are matters of fact, what they are. And, of course, everybody'd rather stay at home and watch Netflix or go eat a good steak or whatever. Those are matters of preferences. Well, I want a steak. I want to eat a taco. Preference. There's no right answer to it. But most things like this are a matter of judgment. Things that you have to reason through all these facts and try to come up with things that will best suit your situation because they're all conflicting with each other. And people are just totally opposite in their thinking about it. But the clearer you are about all the elements, the better chance you have to work through a better judgment. Begin to notice when people treat questions of judgment as questions of fact or procedure. For example, notice when people dogmatically assert their views as facts, rather than as one possible way to reason through a complex question of judgment. Notice whether and to what extent people seem able to enter, in good faith, multiple viewpoints relevant to questions of judgment. And I don't have time to do that here, but I find that to be a very useful exercise to find, if you do it by yourself, do it by yourself. If you can find a compatible mind, person that you trust, simpatico, it's really useful to kind of go back and forth with questions in your life, complex things that don't have one right answer, but you're trying to work through. And at the end of the day, make a list of the important questions you reasoned through that day. Then categorize them in one of the three categories. Were they mainly questions of fact or procedure? Were they mainly questions of preference or of judgment? And then how did you address each one? Did you look for a simple answer to a question of judgment? Wrong. You can't find a simple answer to a question of judgment. It's it's a matter of using the wrong tool. Did you ask someone to give his or her reasoning in answer to a question of preference when you shouldn't have? If you prefer something, if you like Team A or Team B, it's a matter of preference. There's no reason that you have to reason that out. It's not necessary. It's just a matter of preference. You don't have to reason why you like chocolate over vanilla or vice versa, or pie over cake. It's just your preference. There's no one answer. You're never going to get agreement anyway. And it's a question of preference. So anyway, hopefully this gives you something to think about, these three kinds of questions and not confusing them. And hopefully it's another tool for your toolbox. Have a good day.